What's up guys, my name is Arina and welcome back to my channel where I review everything tech. So yes, in this video let's talk about the OnePlus 8. It's been about 2 months since this phone was released and for some reason to me it feels like this phone has been with me forever. When it comes to looks and design, the OnePlus 8 looks a little bit different when compared to the previous models, but still it feels very familiar. And without further ado, let's dive into this OnePlus 8 review, so let's get started. So yes, I got my OnePlus 8 in Interstellar Glow. You probably already know this if you watched my unboxing video. This Interstellar Glow finish looks really nice, and actually the color of this phone depends on the angle from which you'll be looking at it. But honestly, this phone made me realize just how much I love the phones with matte finish, because if there was a fingerprint magnet award, I think this phone would take the first prize. So yeah, I think a case is absolutely necessary if you're gonna go for the Interstellar Glow color, and now I'm wondering if I should have gone for the glacial green maybe, since it's matte and also looks beautiful, but it always comes to personal preferences guys, so let's move on and talk about the display of this phone. We have a 6.55-inch AMOLED display on the OnePlus 8, just like on the OnePlus 7T that has been released last year, and as I already mentioned in my unboxing video, I was pleasantly surprised to see a slight improvement in brightness when I compared the OnePlus 8 to my 7T Pro McLaren. Just like on the previous OnePlus models, once again we get a curved display here, which I've always been a fan of, even though sometimes it's such a hassle when it comes to screen protectors. Unlike the OnePlus 8 Pro with a 120Hz refresh rate display, we have just 90Hz on the OnePlus 8. But honestly, I can't complain here. The display on the OnePlus 8 feels really smooth and responsive. Also, it's very sharp, and so far I've had nothing but an amazing experience with this display. When it comes to display features on the OnePlus 8, they all seem familiar to me from the previous OnePlus models. The night mode that makes colors look much warmer and more comfortable for your eyes. You can manually adjust the color temperature and lightness, and you can set it to automatic. Then we have the reading mode that makes colors look much less saturated, so you could concentrate better on your reading. But honestly, I never use the reading mode. What about you guys? And then we have the vibrant color effect feature, which I'm pretty sure used to be called the video enhancer. I don't know why they changed it, probably to make this feature easier to understand for users. So basically, this feature makes colors more vivid in videos. I usually keep it off as I prefer the natural looking colors, but when I turn it on, I honestly don't see any difference in video colors on this phone. It's quite possible that it could be a bug. I heard some people also had some issues with this vibrant color effect feature, so I hope the OnePlus will fix this problem. And speaking of the video, let's talk about the overall camera setup of the OnePlus 8. I already have a very comprehensive camera comparison video on my channel between the OnePlus 8 and the OnePlus 7T Pro McLaren edition. Check it out if you haven't already. So we have a triple camera on the OnePlus 8, 48 megapixel main camera, 16 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and no, there is no telephoto camera here. Instead, we get a 2 megapixel macro camera. Honestly, I still don't get it. Why would I need a macro camera, which unfortunately turned out to be not really good. And speaking of the telephoto camera, okay, I could take portrait photos with the main camera, no big deal, but when it comes to zoomed photos, you really lose so much in quality when you use the digital zoom on the main camera. We had the telephoto camera on the OnePlus 7T last year, and the whole camera situation on the OnePlus 8 doesn't seem reasonable at all. So to me, it doesn't really feel like I get a triple camera on this phone. I take 2 times and 3 times zoom photos quite often, so for me, the lack of the telephoto camera is kind of a bummer. However, I have to admit that the main camera on the OnePlus 8 takes pretty good shots. You could take either 12 megapixel or 48 megapixel photos. When you open the camera app, the 12 megapixel mode is on by default. You can switch it to 48 megapixels right here. The OnePlus recommends using the 12 megapixel mode, saying that you could get better dynamic range. But if you go for the 48 megapixels, you'll get higher resolution and more details in well-lit scenes. So it's really up to you guys, but I was really curious to see how these two modes would compare. So I took a few shots for you guys and let's take a look at them. Well, there is a slight difference in colors in some photos, but overall I don't see much difference. And when it comes to details, let's take a closer look. Well, I also can't see any difference, to be honest. So after comparing these photos side by side, I don't think there's any point in taking 48 megapixel photos. They will fill up your storage in no time. For instance, this photo is just 6.7 megabytes, while this one is 18.7 megabytes. Let's also not forget about the ultra-wide-angle camera, which we had on the previous OnePlus models as well. And as you can see, it takes really nice wide-angle photos and videos. And speaking of the videos, you can shoot 4K videos at 30 and 60 frames per second in a standard 16:9 aspect ratio. And also, you could switch to the cinematic 21:9 aspect ratio to shoot cinematic 4K videos. And when it comes to the video stabilization on the OnePlus 8, it's simply amazing. Now let's talk about the battery of this phone. We get a quite significant upgrade on the OnePlus 8 when compared to its predecessors. We have 4300 mAh on this phone. We get a familiar Warp Charge 30 power adapter in the box with the OnePlus 8. In my unboxing video, I did a charging test and it took 22 minutes to get 50% of charge. In 30 minutes, I got 63%. In 1 hour, I had 98%. And finally, it took about 1 hour and 4 minutes to fully charge my OnePlus 8, which is an amazing result. And speaking of charging, the only shortcoming of this phone is that the OnePlus 8 doesn't support wireless charging. But it really depends on how often you use wireless chargers and if it's gonna be a problem for you. When it comes to battery life, I was pleasantly surprised to see a significant improvement in this field. This phone easily lasts me through the day, and usually I have about 30% left the following morning. And yes, of course, this phone has been set to 90 Hz. So overall, I get about 7.5 hours of screen on time. Now let's talk about the speakers of the OnePlus 8. We have stereo speakers here, the in-display speaker at the top of the phone right here, and there's also one at the bottom. These speakers are quite loud and the sound quality is also pretty decent. Just like its predecessors, this phone supports Dolby Atmos and you get some sound options to choose from: dynamic, movie or music. One of my favorite things is that when you have your earphones connected to your phone, you get access to the equalizer, so you can add some bass if you want or just play around with the sliders to make the music sound the way you like. When it comes to biometrics and security features, we have the familiar in-display fingerprint sensor on the OnePlus 8. It's really fast and reliable, pretty much just like on the previous OnePlus models, so I cannot say it got any better or faster. And also, we have a face unlock on this device, which is implemented with this hole punch camera. I already told you guys I was really disappointed when I found out that the whole OnePlus 8 series didn't have the pop-up cameras, but I guess you get used to everything. So now I don't really feel sad about it. I just stopped paying attention to this hole punch camera in the display, so I literally don't see it, especially when I set the dark theme. The face unlock on the OnePlus 8 works as usual, it's really fast, just like on its predecessors. So, when I mentioned in the beginning of this video that this phone feels very familiar, I really meant it, because I cannot say this phone is a huge upgrade from the previous OnePlus models. I think I've said the phrase "just like on the previous models" so many times in this video, because I wouldn't say you get a lot of new features on the OnePlus 8 when compared to the OnePlus 7T or 7T Pro. However, there are still some improvements on the OnePlus 8 that I'd like to put out. The first thing is, of course, the battery. This improvement is quite significant and I'd say one of the most important ones to me personally. The second thing is the camera. The overall camera performance seems so much better to me on the OnePlus 8, especially when it comes to videos. And lastly, you get a faster Snapdragon 865 chip on the OnePlus 8. Even though the OnePlus 8 doesn't feel much different from the previous models, I'm still happy to see some of my favorite features here. For example, I really like the quick gestures. I find them extremely helpful. I think this is the easiest way to turn on the flashlight, especially when it's dark and you can't see properly. Also, the quick launch feature is pretty amazing. Here I have quick access to my alarms, timer, and calculator. I use it quite often. It's really helpful. So these are my thoughts on the OnePlus 8. Let me know what you guys think about this phone. Thank you so much for watching this video and see you in the next one.